I'm very happy to have Thom Hartmann, busiest guy in show business here. Host of the Thom Hartmann Show, his own show, of course, at noon to 3 p.m. Eastern Time on this very channel. New York Times best-selling author. And I cannot recommend enough his Substack, The Hartmann Report. Just go to hartmannreport.com. You can sign up. It's free. You're going to learn a lot. Thom, good to see you, my friend.
Hey, Dean, it's great to be with you again. Thanks for inviting me.
Sure. So, Thom, here's my sense. I had posted this earlier. If you ever wondered what it was like to be alive in Germany in 1933, when Hitler came to power, began to consolidate power, threatened democratic nations, sided with other dangerous right-wing leaders, now you know. And that's where I really feel like we are, especially today with the UN vote, where Donald Trump ended up opposing a UN resolution that condemned Russia for attacking Ukraine and calling for the return of the land. Instead, we joined with Eric Swalwell, the congressman, called it the new axis of evil. And we joined with Belarus, Hungary, Russia, North Korea, and Israel to vote against the Ukraine resolution in the United Nations.
Israel.
And this is where we are. Yeah, Israel joined as well.
Netanyahu.
That's because Netanyahu is part of their axis of evil. He is, while he's a democratic elected leader, he is an authoritarian, cut from the same cloth, demagogue, lies, turns people against each other, and has no respect for human life whatsoever. This is all common traits I find in them. Where are we, Thom? What can you tell me?
I think you're right, and I jumped on this bandwagon yesterday or today, I guess. I wrote it yesterday, pointing out that Thursday is the 92nd anniversary of the Reichstag fire, or the Reich. People in America usually refer to it as the Reichstag fire, and that was the day that Marius van der Lubbe, this 27-year-old Dutchman who was probably mentally ill and probably manipulated into it by the Nazis. In fact, he probably got into the Reichstag. This is the German parliament building, through a set of tunnels, underground tunnels that connected several Berlin buildings, from the Nazi headquarters, from one of the Nazi offices. And, he set the building on fire, and Hitler knew it was coming. And when the media got there, he rushed over and he said, "This is a sign from God," and he declared a war on terrorism. And of course, the terrorists were the trans people and the gay people and the communists and the socialists and of course the Jews. So, surprise, surprise, here we are again. And that, and the other really, really shocking and troubling thing that happened that we probably won't see the results of for weeks or months, but when we do, everybody's going to be, it's going to behave like they're shocked anyway. Probably most people will be shocked. Trump got rid of all the senior management in the Pentagon, in each one of the military, one of the armed forces, and got rid of the JAG officers, the attorneys who determine when the military should follow or not follow a lawful or unlawful presidential order. And so all of those people, nonpartisan, non-political people, have been replaced now with Trump toadies. And so when Trump says, "Oh, look at that, there's 1 million people on the streets in Cincinnati, go out and shoot at them," it'll probably happen.
What was really alarming about that, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth said that they're firing the lawyers because, this is quote, "they don't want them to be roadblocks to anything that happens." His exact words is he does not want the lawyers to be roadblocks to anything that happens.
Yeah, you wrote about that too, didn't you? I think I caught that phrase.
Not Pete Hegseth. That newsletter. Which one?
I thought I heard that. I read that phrase in the Dean's report. Maybe not. Maybe I'm mixing it up with something else. But
no, I wrote about the Reichstag thing, the fire. We'll come back to that in a second because we talked about it in your very show. No, but the Secretary of Defense firing him, and the Georgetown law professor Rosa Brooks said in response, in some ways, this is more chilling than firing the 4-star generals. It's what you do when you're planning to break the law. You get rid of any lawyers who might try to slow you down. That's literally what Secretary of Defense. We are watching Donald Trump build an army led by people who, like Hitler, had a loyalty oath where you had to take an oath to Hitler over the German nation, which wasn't a republic anymore. That we are seeing that. We're seeing him take control of every key agency. We're seeing his FBI be headed by Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, whatever his name is. I used to fight with him on Twitter. And Bongino.
I used to debate him on my
program. Oh, you did? You told me, right? So you've got him and these guys, the best and the brightest. This is the dumb and the dumbest. they have brought them together, but they are loyal to Donald Trump. Loyal,
Yeah.
and even the new general that Donald Trump wants to be the chief of staff, Raisin Kane, has said, reportedly, according to Trump, but we're not sure if it's true or not, but Trump thinks it is. He said, "I love you, sir. I think you're great. I'll kill for you, sir." And he was wearing a MAGA hat. That's what Trump said about Kane. Now, a
Yeah.
friend of Kane's,
Illegally wearing a MAGA
uh,
hat when they met in Iraq.
well, right. And according to a friend of Kane's in the military, that's not true. He doesn't have a MAGA hat. That's not what he's about. So on some level, you wonder if in Trump's own delusions of the brain that he lives in, is it true or not? He believes his guy loves him.
Trump
We
just
know
makes
that. So
shit up.
he has to
I mean,
be
this is how he's been
that
selling real estate his whole life, is just making shit up.
right.
And he knows that if he lies enough, 9 times out of 10, the lies just get passed on or ignored, or it works. He's willing to get called
It
out a
does.
few times.
Let's go back. I want to go back, Tom, to your point about the Reichstag fire, because
Hmm.
what I wrote about for my Substack, and you had me on talk about it, a few weeks ago, how at the time Frank Figliuzzi came on my show, former FBI agent, and Congressman Dan Goldman on Homeland Security, both to make the point that Donald Trump is making our nation less safe. And he's
Yeah.
doing that by who he's picking to be in key positions, and that you're going to have our allies. They're not going to share information. They're afraid that it'll be leaked. He might give it to Putin. And so he's making us less safe. And my article was about why is he doing that? And it got to the same place you did. And I gave the example of the Reichstag fire and how it's to create an emergency, even invite a terrorist attack, then to do things like cite the Insurrection Act, to use our military under the command of Pete Hegseth to go on the streets and to arrest, round up dissidents and critics. It is to invoke Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution to the idea of suspending habeas corpus, meaning you can just round people up without charges for extended periods of time.
Yeah.
This, every fiber in my being tells me that's where we're going. And if
I
you want to try to talk me out of it, but if not, if you agree, what do we do?
I don't
If
know.
anything,
I mean,
I
I
know.
I talked to Congressman Ro Khanna about this on the program today, and he made the point that he said Lincoln once said that public opinion is everything. And he said that, and I think he's probably right, that our mission, our job, our big job right now is to corral public opinion, to influence public opinion, to coalesce
Hmm.
public opinion in a way. That's the one thing that Trump can't go against. If the majority of the people are upset with him, and I think that he's Musk in particular, I think he's wildly overstepped. And this is gonna come back on him. James Carville a couple of days ago said that he thinks that Trump will have collapsed within 30 days. I'm not anywhere near that optimistic, but I do think that when it gets ugly, or if it gets ugly, and I think it's more likely a when, that it's going to make the 60s look like a friggin' picnic. And I
And what
live,
do you mean by that?
well, people in the
What do you,
streets, factions like the Weather Underground spinning off that are willing to use violence,
ah,
um, uh,
mhm.
civil rights groups, forming coalitions with anti-war groups or anti-Trump groups. Just there was, and then on top of that, you had the police back then, mostly using the drug laws to bust people who were in SDS. That happened to a bunch of people that I knew in East Lansing. So I, I think all those things will probably happen. The question is how big is the net going to be? How aggressive are they going to get? How brutal are they willing to get? Trump is sadistic, and
Mhm.
Hitler was sadistic. I mean, both these men
Sure.
are not just narcissists and psychopaths, but sadists. And I think that they're going out of their way to surround themselves with sadists, which is why Trump does performatively sadistic things like tearing children from their mother's arms, so that it's another form of loyalty test. The people around him are either enthusiastic about it, which means they're sadists, or they're out, and nothing in between. So I don't know, Dean. This is the stuff that wakes me up in the middle of the night. In fact, I had a dream about it last night. I
Did you?
am
All right.
Yeah, that we're heading toward um toward one of these times. And I mean, you and I have talked about this before. I lived for a little over a year in Germany, and
Hmm.
two of my best friends when I was there were men much older than me. They're both passed away now. Who were one was in Hitler's intelligence service, was captured in Iran, spent the whole war in a prison in Iran, and the other was in the Hitler Youth. And the stories that they told me about, what they believed and what they heard and how it all happened and how everybody was gung ho and it was a mass hysteria and initially it all seemed just wonderful. I mean, Hitler put the economy back together. He invented the Volkswagen. He built the Autobahn. He reindustrialized Germany. He brought back German pride after the defeat in World War I and the Treaty of Versailles. All of that stuff. Frankly, I don't see Trump doing that. I see, I mean, Hitler built in 1937 or 38, when he was on the early 38 before Poland, when he was on the cut, well, I guess Poland was 39, when he was on the cover of Time magazine in 38, he was the most popular politician in the world. And,
Wow.
which was the point that Time magazine made and that Shearer made in his book, The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. He was fabulously popular. And, people kind of overlooked his racism. I mean, look at what Trump just did that nobody's really calling him out for in firing General Brown. This guy is a
Hmm.
four-star general. It was his idea to defeat ISIS. ISIS, we had been treating ISIS like it was some sort of an insurgency or an army. And Brown said, no, 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 no. This is a nation. You have to treat it like a nation. So the first thing you do is you go after its money. You go after its banking system. And then the second thing you do is you go after its infrastructure, its bureaucracy. And so they completely recalibrated the military strategy, the military approach to ISIS, and destroyed it. And that was Brown. On the other hand, he just got replaced by this guy who's only a three-star general. I believe that's lieutenant general. I could be wrong. I'm not,
Right.
so it's not even really a full general, I suppose.
Lieutenant General Dan Raisin Kane. That's the guy.
Yeah, and there's never been a Joint Chiefs head who was not a four-star general. They're going to have to give this guy a promotion just to make him eligible. But he's got white skin. But he's a completely undistinguished career. I mean, he's not currently, other than the fact that he loves Trump and he'll do whatever Trump says. But he's retired.
Hmm.
He's only a three-star. He was in the National Guard, whereas Brown has this amazing record. But he was a black guy, and so he gets kicked out. And the media won't even call that what it is, which is just the purging of black people in America. So I don't know.
Well, we'll go back to the corporate media in a second.
Yeah,
I share your concerns, and that the guy that Trump is nominating doesn't he's not he doesn't have the legal requirements for the job. So
correct.
Trump has to waive it. Also has to get confirmed by the Senate. So we're going to hear a lot more about him. And it is concerning. Tom, it's surreal to be where we are, to watch this. If you know history, you're going to have problems sleeping right now. If you
Yeah,
don't know history, you might sleep well. That's the reality, because both you and I love history. I've read a great deal about the rise of Hitler and Mussolini, and even Putin. And you see the parallels going on now that we're living through in terms of their playbook. That's why I keep talking about they follow the authoritarian playbook. It's why Timothy Snyder's book on tyranny is so helpful for people. They're not original. They follow what others have used before because it works.
yeah,
And talking about the sadism part and the enjoyment of being sadistic. My friend Jason Selvig is part of this comedy team, The Good Liars, but they went to CPAC. They don't even do jokes there. They just interview people and don't play any games. And they saw a guy wearing a very real looking ICE type of jacket, like for immigration. And Jason went and talked to him and said, do you work for ICE? He goes, no, I have this jacket. I love it. And he said, oh, can I tell you what I do for fun? And Jason's like, sure. He goes, I go to Home Depot on Saturday mornings and walk around so that the undocumented people run out of the store. And this is the fun. This is the enjoyment the guy was sharing. That is the sadistic part. Think about that kind of moment in your life where your enjoyment is going to a store and taunting people who are vulnerable by walking around like you're not even an ICE, you're nothing. Like you're a nobody. You're a scumbag Trump supporter and wearing an ICE jacket at a Home Depot. But what Trump has done, like Hitler, he gave people a sense of worth. Like they have some value now and some power when they really don't. They really are powerless. They're truly impotent. but he has made them feel like they're good. And that's part of the problem here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you know, and then the question becomes, what are we going to do about it? You know, we're watching the rule of law being deconstructed right in front of us, Pam Bondi, and you know,
Yep.
now, you know, we were talking a few minutes ago about, you know, what happens if there's a terror attack in America and Trump uses it the way Hitler used the Reichstag fire. Well, you know, who prevents terror attacks? The FBI, the FBI specifically in Washington, D.C. And guess what just happened to the FBI in Washington, D.C.? 1,000 to 1,500 FBI agents are being reassigned all around the country. They're having to leave D.C. You know, it looks like Kash Patel might get his wish to empty out the Hoover building and turn it into a museum of the deep state. So none of it
It's
is making us safer.
No, it's not. I'm talking with our friend Thom Hartmann. So, Tom, we talked on your show a little bit about this, but it was at that time when Donald Trump sided with Putin over Ukraine. Now we have a situation where we also have the newly elected German chancellor, Friedrich Merz, who will likely be the chancellor. That's what it seems like, saying things that he wants to strengthen Europe as quickly as possible so we can achieve real independence from the USA step by step. We have Donald Trump alienating us from our Western allies while getting closer to autocrats and dictators and people cut from that authoritarian playbook. And how concerned are you that he's trying to isolate the United States as part of a new axis of evil or some new autocratic alliance and alienate us from Canada, from the EU, and all their other Western allies?
Well, he's doing exactly what Putin wants. You know, he's deconstructing the United States. He's weakening us internationally. He's weakening us domestically. He's taking a meat axe to our economy. I don't know if you saw the numbers recently or the stories about Florida's tourism bureaus freaked out because the Canadians who used to come down to Florida to vacation, you know, in January, February, March, they're not there. You know,
Wow.
yeah, they're just
I didn't
not
think
there.
of that.
I mean, you know, hundreds of thousands of people and, you know, hundreds of millions of dollars. And, you know, every government job that's lost, there's a knock-on effect. I mean, people, when they're on unemployment, don't spend in their local stores and those kind of things. This is starting to hit red states really hard. The question, I think, is will the consequences of his damage catch up with him in time to stop it? And I don't know the answer to that question. I don't think anybody does. And there's a lot of speculation around it. There was an interesting piece in the Financial Times about this a couple of days ago. Um, you know, one hopes.
So, Tom, you mentioned that he's hurting our economy. He is. He just announced today, for what it's worth, when he was with Macron, the French president, that the tariffs against Canada and Mexico are going to effect in a week. I don't know if that's negotiated or not, but he is hurting our economy. Consumer confidence is down. Friday, we got the latest report. Prices are going up. Stock market is shaky at the least. It's sliding, and I think we're going to see a correction soon. It really seems like there's a lot of people unnerved. If he does these new tariffs, he's already done some of China, just against Mexico and Canada. It will cause even more of a slowdown, and the massive layoffs are going to affect our economy.
And try
What
to
is
buy.
the end game? I mean, do you really think it's about weakening us so much to allow Putin to have more sway? I mean, what do you think it is? This is what's really troubling me.
I think the international stuff and the having Elon Musk gut our government are both. I think the international stuff is Putin, particularly USAID. I mean, USAID has been a thorn in Putin and Xi's side forever. I think a lot of the domestic stuff is kind of following the David Koch agenda. I mean, David Koch ran for vice president in 1980 on a platform of shutting down every federal agency except the military, basically. You know, it's this whole libertarian approach, and I think that's you've got some true believers in there who think that that's going to bring about an economic paradise, and they're just idiots. I mean, you know, Paul Krugman is calling them out on that, for example, over on Substack now. But Putin has to be excited about it. You know, hey, kneecap America's economy. Oh yeah, that'll be
Right.
good. And you know, so you know, the other thing that has been weighing on me, and I'm probably going to write about this for day after tomorrow, for my newsletter, is that the Supreme Court said that it's okay to purge people from voting rolls. So we saw 17 million people purged from the voting rolls between 2022 and 2024. That it's okay to challenge the signatures of mail-in voters in ways, largely without justification. And it's okay to gerrymander based on race and politics. And Republicans have done all those things. Democrats have done none of those things. And it's okay to mail out postcards into Black neighborhoods. And if the postcards that look like junk mail, and if those postcards don't come back, then purge those people from the voting rolls. Now, I'm guessing, not guessing, Democrats have done none of those things. I'm going to write a piece arguing strongly that Democrats should do all of those things. Democrats need to begin purging voters, in red areas in blue states.
Mm-hmm.
Democrats need to be gerrymandering. I mean, if California was as gerrymandered as North Carolina, there would never be a Republican majority in the House again. California reversed their gerrymander in 2008. Democrats need to be recruiting people to challenge mail-in signatures in red states or in red areas. And they need to start, doing caging, sending out these postcards. That will then cause Republicans to scream and howl about it, which will bring the publicity to it that might cause some change. I'm not saying Democrats should do this as a strategy to win. They should do it as a strategy to end the damn process.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think since you're trying to bring it up to a head, so to speak, like to make it where everyone's like, okay, this is awful. We got to get rid of this stuff. Everyone's going to get rid of this.
Yeah,
I hate gerrymandering, but you can't unilaterally disarm when the other side.
I mean, imagine if the NFL said we're going to change the rules and teams can have 3 additional players, at all times on the field. And half the NFL teams said, well, that's not fair. That's not the way we've always done it. We're not going to put on those 3 extra players. And the other half said, hey, cool, we'll do it. Who's going to win the Super Bowl, right? Who's going to win the games? I mean, this isn't rocket science, Dean.
That's a good point. Hey, so I want to shift gears here. A couple last things before I let you go. One is about media. We've talked a great deal about corporate media and what they're doing, that they're not our friend. I keep telling people, I'm not saying corporate media is our enemy, corporate news media. I'm saying corporate news media is just a vehicle to make money, and you should view it as such. But, they just fired my friend Joy Reid. Tonight's our last show. They're pushed out other really good fighters. And then you've got Joe Scarborough goes down and meets in Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump, and he's fine. And it really seems to me we're seeing a message sent by corporate media. Doesn't it make it even more important and more acute the need for independent media to rise up, including us? I mean, even though we oddly work in this corporate media world, we really are much more of an independent media model in what we do and the freedom we have.
Yeah, and thankfully, even though
exactly,
SiriusXM is owned by a company that's owned by a right-wing billionaire.
I know, but we never hear anything, so it's kind of good. I guess I'm not making the impact that I want. If I was having more of an impact, maybe we would hear more from them. I got to get them angry at me.
I think we're the token liberals, but and that's fine with me. I'll take the platform, but I do think that. I have 2 thoughts about what's going on at MSNBC. They're purging basically people of color, and it was what, 5 of them now, and none of them are white men. And on the one hand, you could say, okay, this is a purge of people of color. On the other hand, there's this natural human characteristic that people want to see or listen to or interact with people who they perceive as being like them. There are no major television programs that have a majority Black cast. Why? Because the majority of America is white. And if you want a television program to be successful and sell advertising, you fill it with white people. It's not, you could call that structural racism, and I think you could build a strong case for that, but it's also just a reality of the marketplace. And many of these shows just we're not getting the ratings. And I think it's probably because they were getting largely, audiences of people of color rather than white audiences. I'd love to dig into the demographics of their ratings. If that's the case, then we've got a lot of work to do as a society And I think that, for a while we kind of cracked that open, that white control of the whole media thing. I mean, All in the Family was my old friend Norman Lear was the first guy to really,
Mm.
profile, put black people on TV in a positive way. And that was just in the 90s. I mean, that was not even 30 years ago. So, I get the whole ratings thing, and I get maybe the psychology, the social psychology behind it. Or maybe not. I don't know. Some of those folks might not just have been brilliant broadcasters. Um, I, you know, I think anybody who tries to reduce this to one factor is going to make a mistake. And you've got to, recognize that the first and for, as you pointed out just a minute ago, the number one goal of MSNBC and every other television network is to make a profit, and they have to
Hmm.
answer to their shareholders. And you don't make a profit without good ratings. So, how this is going to play out and what consequence it's going to have, particularly for people of color, I don't know. Um, you know, I don't know. I'm blithering at this point. Sorry, Dean.
No, look, I think that you make a good point that it's not just one factor involved or one reason why they'll change the lineup of the shows. It is more complex, and sometimes we like things to be a little bit simpler. But
I
you
know, for
do,
example, that an awful lot of my audience is, over 60, because I'm over 60. I know an awful lot of probably your audience, you're in your 50s, I believe, is probably in their 50s. Like I said,
I think
people,
it's all over different age, right? But it's,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I have a lot of teenagers who listen. No, I don't. I'm kidding. I'm not.
Well, but if you were a teenager, you probably would. And that's one of the really
Sure, I
smart.
would. I would connect with them better, right?
Yeah, well, that's one of the really smart things that the right-wing programmers with their 1,500 radio stations all over the country have been doing, is hiring young people and bringing them up and training them. And they've got a really aggressive farm team, and promoting podcasts of young people. So, they know their demographics. They know where the power and influence is. And in a country that is, roughly 70% white, there's a not an imperative, but a pressure to program to that audience.
It, very much so, and I understand that. So I will miss watching Joy or going on Joy's show.
Me too.
The At the same time, Ali Velshi, they gave him a third hour. He's going to have 3 hours. And I know you go on, I go on Ali's show sometime. I know you go on Ali Velshi's show. He's a really good guy. And he
Yeah,
does a
yes.
phenomenal job on the weekend. So I'm happy he has an extra hour there. Last thing, there was something in your article about the Reichstag fire that jumped out at me, that 3 people at CPAC did Nazi salutes, Steve Bannon and 2 others.
Yeah.
And it gets very little press now. And I really believe we are not far from the crowd responding with a Nazi salute, the same way at like a Hitler rally. And they'll try to do it like, oh, it's wink, wink. We're just trying to own the libs here. But that's not what's going on in my sense. So what is your take? Why do they do? I mean, literally, Steve Bannon and 2 other people. And in your newsletter, you show the pictures of all 3. And of course, Elon Musk did his before that, where he did twice very clearly the fascist salute there. What do you think is going on here?
Yeah. In fact, Elon Musk did it correctly. You hit your heart first, and then you throw your arm out, which I just did.
Ah,
Nice.
well, you did it to make it. You're giving an example. It
Yeah.
wasn't like you were doing it to
So,
somebody.
yeah. I I'm guessing that there were probably salutes returned in those audiences. I mean, I haven't seen an audience shot. I don't know if you have, but
I want to see that. That's what we're getting to. I really
I would
think
be
we're on our
surprised if
way
there
there.
weren't. I would be surprised if there weren't. And I think this is going to become a trend. They're gonna reinvent it as the Caesar salute or the Roman salute, and it's gonna lose its Nazi association. And it's now you also have this Caesar Trump thing that's all over CPAC. There you know and of course the Roman salute came from Caesar. That
Right.
salute came from Caesar. So they'll claim that, oh no, that's a Caesar salute. But
It's okay. We're saluting him like an emperor. We're
exactly
not trying to do it like a Nazi. He's just an emperor. That's how we view him. So
right,
don't be
which
alarmed.
is basically what Führer means, by the way. The Führer was the emperor. I mean, it's
Ah,
technically leader, but the historic meaning was more like emperor. So yeah, here we are.
this
It's
is where we are. Well, as I said on MSNBC Saturday, I was on Eamon's show. Well, his show got canceled, but at least he's going to remain with the network and do another weekend show as a panel. System. We were talking about the 22nd Amendment. And I said, I don't know why we discussed this. Trump's not leaving the White House alive. And I don't know what more it would take for people to understand. I'm not joking. I'm not being over the top. He's not leaving alive. That he might not survive the next 3 years. That's true. 3 or 4 years. But if he's still alive, he's not leaving alive. And
I
people
agree.
have to understand that's where we're getting.
Even if all else fails and he has to run as vice president.
Well, technically he wouldn't be eligible. But
yeah, I know. You pointed
not,
that out to me the last time we discussed this.
Right. But that doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter. Like we will have an election, or if he runs and loses, even if he loses, who removes him? He has absolute immunity thanks to the Supreme Court. He can order the military. He can invoke some weird emergency that we don't even know about. I have to stay here, whatever. He's not leaving alive. So, well, my friend Thom, it's great to sign up for Thom's newsletter, hartmannreport.com, Substack. It's great. Have a great night, my friend. Thanks so much for sticking around and doing our show. I know you did Michael Cohen. You did so much all day. So thanks for being on.
It's my pleasure, Dean. And it's always, what I really appreciate about your show, Dean, is that you're thoughtful and there's depth to your program. And it's just always a pleasure, a privilege, and an honor to be here with you.
Oh, thank you very much, my friend. I really appreciate it. Have a great night.
Yeah.